Alright, Black Asta has just dropped on global and I have gotten him to level 100. I got one dupe in my summons, man. It was rough, so hopefully your summons went well if you did pull for this guy. And today we are going to be talking about how you should be building this character, what skills you want to upgrade first, what skill cards you want to put on him, what gear you want to run on him, whether or not he's actually worth enhancing, what talents you want to run on the talent tree, and then of course what teams does he fit well on for both PvP and PvE. So let's go ahead and start by talking about his passive, because his passive is what sets up his entire kit. It's actually really unique and something that you don't see on any other character in the game. So if his HP is equal to or lower than 40%, applies anti-magic to self. If HP is above 40%, removes anti-magic from self, okay? And what is anti-magic? Anti-magic is per 1500 defense. It grants a 15% increased damage dealt and status ailment immunity when he goes into that anti-magic state. So basically, whenever he drops below 40% health, he is now going to be a defense unit who also has a lot of extra damage from your defense, okay? So ideally, you want to be building up his defense stat as much as possible. That way you get as much damage as possible. So with that in mind, his skill 1 is called Demon Slayer Sword. It is a single target attack. If anti-magic is present on self, meaning you are below 40% health, grants a SP plus 8 buff whenever you use this skill 1. So you could literally pretty much go and use your special, then use skill 1, then use your special, then use skill 1, like just over and over again. It's actually just insane, right? So that's really good as long as he stays below 40% health. And then if anti-magic is not present on self, inflicts HP recovery immunity on an enemy for 2 turns. So if you are not doing big amounts of damage and you're just using him as a defender, then that means he's still going to be able to put HP recovery immunity on an enemy with his skill 1, which is absolutely insane. So you could be doing that every turn. That's really, really good. And then his skill 2 is called Black Hurricane. It is an AoE attack. If anti-magic is present on self, attacks after inflicting barrier removal on a designated enemy. So even though this is an AoE, that barrier removal will only work on one enemy. But that's still pretty nice that he does barrier removal. And then if anti-magic is not present on self, grants all allies an increased defense level 3 buff for 2 turns. That is insanely good because increased defense level 3 is 175%, and that is not just for himself, that is for your allies as well, which is insanely good when you pair this guy with Season 4 Noel, or Season 4 on global at least. And then grants all allies a total defense buff for 2 turns as well if you have his skill card. So all of this, very, very good. This is going to be a big damage dealer for you as well when he does go into that anti-magic state. And then as for his special skill, it is called Black Meteorite. It is a single target attack with the highest amount of possible attack in the game, because when you level it up, it becomes a 300% attack, which is just insane. You are pretty much going to be killing somebody if you use it. And so what it does, if anti-magic is present on self, attacks after inflicting barrier removal once again. And then if anti-magic is not present on self, inflicts taunt on an enemy for 2 turns. All the way around good, right? So he has taunt, he has barrier removal there, he has defense for allies and extra defense for allies with his skill card, and then he also has HP recovery block, and he regens his own SP for the special skill. Just so much going on with this kit, right? And then it gets better though, because his combo skill here inflicts a stun status element on the enemy for 1 turn. One of the best combo skills in the game. So like, this character is just insanely, insanely good. Now, in terms of upgrade priority, I actually would not even touch the combined skill because you're just using it more for utility. So even though it's good, I wouldn't recommend upgrading this. I'd actually recommend upgrading that last. So ideally, the order for upgrade that you want to go is for skill 2, you want to do this first because it is your AoE. It's going to allow you to do the most damage when you go into that anti-magic state. And just imagine you get the, you have anti-magic. You don't have anti-magic, you go and you do this and you increase your defense for 2 turns, and then you go into the anti-magic state and you attack. Like, he could be very, very, very strong. Okay, and then for the special skill, I would do this second. So I'd go skill 2, then special skill, and then I would go skill 1. Okay, it's kind of a toss-up between skill 2 and the special skill because the special skill does just hit so hard. But I would say go skill 2 because it is the AoE. AoE damage is always going to be pretty good on Black Asta. Now, in terms of skill cards, his skill card is by far in every way the best possible skill card you can run on him. However, I do recommend, if you are able, duping it out all the way. You can see I have one dupe into it. I do have some versatile skill pages that I can use on it. This is a character I might actually use your versatile skill pages on because it could help him out a lot. Okay, so what does this do besides the obvious grants all allies a total defense buff? Well, in addition to that, if anti-magic is present on self per 1500 defense, grants 13% increased damage dealt. Okay, so this is why you want to have his skill card, because while his passive is good, you want this passive as well, because remember his LR passive does something similar with the anti-magic right here. Anti-magic just by itself gives you extra damage based on your defense. Well, if you have his skill card here, you are getting even more damage. If anti-magic is present, you are getting a extra 13% increased damage per 1500 defense, which is absolutely insane. So you 100% want Asta with the skill card. It's going to make a giant difference in how good he is for your team. Now, if you do lack this skill card, there are other options. One of those options would be Moonlight Necklace here. And so what this does is it applies a 40 to 80% increased defense buff and a 6 to 10% increased healing to yourself. That's pretty good for him overall, but like still, once again, you just need the effect of what his skill card offers. So these are like last resorts. If you really couldn't get his skill card, then run these, okay? Another option would be Survival of the Fittest with Mars if you just want to stack up Fortify and have some extra defense. And the third and final option I would give to you guys, this is a PvE option, is Persevering Resolution, and this is an SR skill card that's hopefully obtainable for most people, and it applies a 10 to 18% reduced damage taken to yourself upon taking damage from a boss. So once again, a PvE skill card. But those are kind of the skill cards I would run for him. They work pretty dang well. And then besides that, gear. Let's talk about that. This is where it gets really interesting. Okay, so for gear, you want to be going for defense pieces of gear as much as possible. And this time I am going to talk a little bit more about substats. I'm going to try to talk more about substats here in future videos, because now we are finally getting enough substat reroll stones to actually make a difference, right? Initially we didn't, so I kind of held off on talking about it, but now I want to talk about it. Okay, so very first off, you want to go for defense gear as much as you can. Okay, so we have 4 pieces right there, and then to complete these sets here, you just have to run other like attack pieces. So these are the attack pieces I'm running. Ideally, I will switch these 2 out for LR pieces later on when I get them, and whatever like LR gear you can run up here for accessories is going to be good. Ideally, you want to go for like defense pieces. So if you can, go for defense pieces on accessories. Now, in terms of sets for Black Asta, you want to go for a gold defense set. 100% go for this. It gives you defense plus 30%. It's very, very good. I would also recommend going for a mobility set on Asta, because his mobility is not the best. Or his speed is not the best. It's at 100, right? That's not the highest. So you want him to be able to fill up his mobility gauge a little bit faster so he gets his turns quicker. So I would almost for sure go with this, because it will give you 5% increased speed buff for 2 turns at the start of a wave, which will help Black Asta out a lot. And then for this final slot, this one's kind of arbitrary. You could switch it out for like an attack, gold attack set if you wanted, or you could go for crit damage. You could do a whole slew of things. Personally, I like going for defense because I'm trying to increase that defense to give myself more damage overall. So I would personally recommend going defense here as well. It gives you just an extra 250 defense, but hey, every little bit counts. Okay, so that's what I would go for. Now, in terms of substats for your gears, you'll notice that I have defense as the main stat, but then I have this thing called damage resist on Asta. I would get as much damage resist, crit resist, and defense as you can. Those would be kind of the 3 substats I would go for. So this, you can see damage resist, crit resist, and if we go down here, crit resist, damage resist, defense, HP. This is like the ideal right here. Ideal, this is the most ideal piece of gear you could get. Crit resist, HP, defense, damage resist. You could go percentages for some of these and make it a little bit better, but that's pretty decent. Okay, so damage resist, crit resist, attack, crit rate. Like attack and crit rate aren't bad, right? And then defense, damage resist, HP. So I tried to go for those things because those things are going to help give him a lot of survivability. And in the end, increasing his defense as well with the substats like right here is going to, of course, up your damage when you get into that anti-magic state. So that's kind of how I build Asta. Hopefully that makes sense. Substats are going to matter on this character, and it'll make the difference for how good your Asta is. Now, in terms of enhancement, let's take a look at what he can do at level 2 enhancement. So at level 2 enhancement, he, upon gaining anti-magic, inflicts taunt on all enemies for 1 turn. That is very nice, because if you go below 40% health, now you are taunting them and defending your team, as well as being able to be the big damage dealer. Okay, so that's pretty decent. And then go down here. At 4 dupes, you get crit resist, so extra crit resist is always good to keep him alive. And then for dupe 5 right here, it's worded kind of weird. I don't know if they messed up or I don't know. It's really weird, but Pride Wind kind of says something different, and from my understanding, it's different. Okay, but like, all right, so you still get the effect of getting him to 2 dupes right here, where you taunt all enemies for 1 turn upon entering anti-magic. But then right here, at the start of a wave, grants all, I believe this should say allies, all allies status element immunity for 1 turn. You know why it wouldn't make sense to give enemies status element immunity? I believe that's a typo. So I believe that should say allies right there. And basically what that's going to do is at the start of battle, Asta is going to essentially give your allies status element immunity until he gets his first turn, ensuring that your team is not going to be stunned or whatever else. So that is actually really, really nice. So fully duping this character is actually highly recommended and definitely worth it if you can get him to 5 copies. Even just getting him to 2 copies though, I would say is worth it because that anti-magic taunt, that is honestly pretty good overall. So if you were to ask me, should you put versatile mage pieces into this Asta? Yes, absolutely. He is very, very good. Just like we did with Julius, fully duping Julius out, I would recommend fully duping out Asta if you can. Now, in terms of talents, what should you be running? So for the attack tree, I would go for the attack plus 7%, and then I would go for the damage dealt plus 5%. You could also go for this right here, crit damage, and you could go for the damage dealt together. So you could go for these 2 together, or you could go for these 2 together. Personally, I prefer upping my attack stat. Then for defense, this one's a little bit different than my normal build, but we're still keeping the 20% defense increase, and then I would go for the Iron Will here. So what Iron Will does is grants debuff immunity for 1 turn if HP is equal to or lower than 35%. Well, Black Asta could definitely thrive from that when he drops below his 40% threshold to get the anti-magic, right? So that's going to help him out a lot. So I would actually run Iron Will on Asta here. These would be the 2 main ones I run for defense. And then as for support, I would actually fully finish the support tree if you can and get a talent stone in here for speed because he could use a little bit of speed still. But then I would run accuracy and penetration. Penetration is going to be a big one for helping Asta just, you know, maximize his damage overall. And then I would also run the grants debuff immunity for 1 turn upon resisting damage successfully because obviously Asta is a tank and hopefully you built him with some resist in the gear like I said. So if you resist damage successfully, it gives him debuff immunity, and that is just going to help him even more in battle and help your team even more in battle. So that is the talent tree build I would go for him. You could always switch out any of these things, like for the reduced skill 2 cooldown, you could do that with the increased accuracy and penetration, but I do think these 2 are like the best way to go in terms of the support talent tree. Now let's go ahead and talk about potential teams for Asta. So I am going to say right off the bat, a lot of these teams will probably be changing with the introduction of Witch Queen when she does come out, because originally Witch Queen, when this character released for JP and KR, was already in the game, and it made Asta very, very good because you could drop him to that 40% health threshold really quickly. However, right now on Global, we do not have him. So there's kind of like 2 or 3 teams that I would probably expect to see people running in PvP. And then as far as PvE goes, I wouldn't really expect to see like anything too crazy. I mean, Asta's just a defender. He can fit on any PvE team you want, right? So I don't even think it's worth showing you guys a PvE team because you can literally do any team you want for PvE and Asta could be there. He's actually just insane. But this would be a PvP team I would expect to see because you have Asta for the extra defense for your allies. Remember, 175% defense plus the total defense. Then you have Noelle lowering the attack of the enemies, which is really good. You have William for increasing the speed of Julius, and then Julius just one-shot somebody, so this team could work out very, very well. Another team you might potentially see in PvP would be something like this, and this is going to be a all-mono red team. You have him for the silence, you have her for immortality and damage, barrier removal, and then defense as well to give them all survivability. This team would probably work out pretty well. You could end up switching out Fuegoleon for other red characters. Probably you could probably try running like where is he? Red Yami, wherever he is. He's somewhere over here. There we go. You could probably run Red Yami here if you wanted, and that would be a solid option. You could probably even try running like Sally if you wanted to try and buff like Charmy. You could do all sorts of things here. So this team is definitely a potential option. You could also potentially even try to run the Red Charlotte here if you get anti-magic with Asta, do your AoE, kill someone, and then you get to attack again with Asta. So there's lots of options for teams, but these are kind of the 2 teams that I would run in PvP or try out right now. So that is it for his build guide. Hopefully that helps you guys out a little bit. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.